I still, wake up and I have to eat, Like nothing is like severely changed in my life, really. But I take a lot more cabs than I used to.
Matthew Broderick will always be Ferris Bueller to a lot of people, the charming rule breaker who made skipping school feel like a victory lap. But behind that pop culture glow is a tragedy that has followed him for decades. The 1987 crash in Northern Ireland that killed 2 local women and left Broderick and his then-girlfriend, actress Jennifer Grey, badly injured. For years, the story resurfaced in headlines with more questions than answers, partly because Broderick has spoken about it only rarely. When he does address it, it's usually in brief, sober fragments that point to confusion, missing memory, and the heavy reality of what happened on a quiet road far from Hollywood. Today, we're laying out what's known, what people involved have actually said, and why this single afternoon still gets talked about so often, so many years later. Because this is the story behind Matthew Broderick breaking his silence on a crash that took 2 lives. Fame, vacation, and a wrong turn.
I don't know what happened, where it all got forgotten, or who buried it, or what happened.
In the summer of 1987, Broderick and Jennifer Grey were riding a rare wave of momentum. He was fresh off the success of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and she was about to become a household name through Dirty Dancing. They chose a getaway in Northern Ireland, hoping for something quieter than red carpets and premieres. On August 5th, they set out in a rented BMW on the kind of rural roads that can feel deceptively simple, long stretches with few landmarks and little traffic. Some later accounts have suggested a sudden weather change or a basic disorientation that can hit visitors who are adjusting to left-side driving without even realizing it. Near the Enniskillen area in County Fermanagh, the rental crossed into the opposite lane and struck an oncoming Volvo head-on. The 2 people in that car, 28-year-old Anna Gallagher and her 63-year-old mother, Margaret Doherty, were killed. Broderick and Grey survived, but both were injured and taken to the hospital. From the start, the most painful question was also the hardest to answer. Why did the car drift into oncoming traffic at all? That single missing detail has kept the story alive because it's the difference between an explainable mistake and a moment that feels almost impossible to process. The memory gap Broderick has described.
You were with Matthew in the car, and that car struck another one, and it ended 2 lives. What were the days and weeks like for you after that accident? How did you cope?
I was in shock because I was the only living witness, and Matthew was unconscious and had amnesia, and the other 2 women died.
Broderick's clearest public comments about the crash have focused on what he cannot remember. In a 2002 interview, he described a blank space that swallowed the day, right down to his morning routine, which is one reason he's never offered a clean second-by-second explanation. I don't remember even getting up in the morning. I don't remember making my bed, Broderick said. What I first remember is waking up in the hospital with a very strange feeling going on in my leg. That kind of statement can frustrate people who want a neat answer, but it also explains why his version of events stops at the hospital door. If you only come back to yourself after the impact, you can't describe the moment your hands turned the wheel or what you were reacting to. Records about the crash have also noted that neither Broderick nor Grey could fully explain the lane change with certainty. One explanation that has floated around is that Grey leaned down to put a music tape into a cassette player under the dashboard. Another is that the actor became confused in the split-second adjustments of driving on the opposite side. None of that changes the core reality of what happened. 2 people died on a sunny afternoon, and the person behind the wheel later described a total memory loss of the lead-up, which is the kind of detail that can make a tragedy feel even harder to settle in the mind. What Jennifer Grey says happened after the impact.
I was putting a cassette in the cassette player at the time, and I heard the scream and I looked up. It was devastating. And there's something about near-death experience and being that close to death, and that curtain just goes up, and just somehow I slip through.
Grey has shared more about the aftermath, especially when discussing her memoir. She's called the crash one of the top traumas of her life and described the fear of being awake when the world around her felt empty. Quote, "The car accident in Ireland was, I would say, top 3 traumas of my life, maybe top 1. It's very hard to describe when you have a near-death experience and are present for the death of other people," Grey said. She also described the isolation and panic of those first moments after, when she was on a country road with little sense of what was going on. Being alone on a country road in the middle of nowhere with no one else around or conscious was pretty terrifying, she said, explaining how disorienting it was to realize she was the only one alert. I was the sole living witness because Matthew had survived, but he was unconscious and had amnesia and was very badly injured. I thought he was dead, she added. I didn't even know there were 2 other women who were tragically killed at the time. It's just something that you just don't come back from in the same way. Grey has directly pushed back on the idea that she held back some missing clue. She said there was no secret answer, nobody was drinking, and that people wanting a clean explanation were simply looking for something that was not there. The court case and the sentence people never forgot.
Have you learned any little tricks to discourage people?
You can put a Walkman on, is one thing. There's nothing to do. You could kill them. I don't know. What can you do?
After the crash, Broderick faced legal consequences in Northern Ireland, and this is where the story shifted from tragedy into controversy. Early reporting treated the incident as a serious matter, with the possibility of heavy charges, because 2 deaths were involved, and there had been a lane crossing onto oncoming traffic. In the end, the case concluded with Broderick being convicted of careless driving and receiving a fine. For many people, that outcome felt completely out of scale with the loss of life. It's a result that's been repeated for decades because it feeds a bigger cultural argument about whether fame softens consequences. The families of the 2 women who died have been described as believing he got off too lightly. The anger has never been hard to understand. When grief has no fix and no rewind button, the courtroom becomes one of the only places where people expect something to balance the scales. The complication is that courts do not run on emotional logic. They run on definitions, burden of proof, and what can be demonstrated beyond doubt. When there's no clear explanation for why the car crossed lanes, and when the driver has no memory of the moment, the legal system can land on a lesser charge. That may explain it legally, but it doesn't make it feel satisfying to those left behind. Why the story still surfaces when he speaks. After the crash, Broderick returned to acting, and the public kept seeing him through the lens of light comedic roles. That contrast is part of why the accident still comes up. It clashes with the simple character people associated with him, and it doesn't fit neatly into the way celebrity stories are usually told. When headlines claim he's broken his silence, it's often less about a new revelation and more about how rarely he talks about it at all. His few comments tend to circle the same points: missing memory, waking in the hospital, and struggling to come to grips with the reality that 2 strangers died. Grey's recollections add another layer because she has emphasized the lasting emotional shock. She said she still thinks about the family in Ireland and that the tragedy never fully leaves you. Her framing also helps explain why people keep returning to the story. It's not just a scandal headline, it's a real, specific day on a real road that changed multiple lives at once. And that is the uncomfortable heart of it. A celebrity survived, a major star career continued, and 2 local women are remembered mostly through the worst day imaginable. That imbalance is exactly why the story still resurfaces and why it keeps provoking strong reactions even all these years later. Now it's time to hear from you. When you look at the known facts, the memory gaps described afterward, and the legal outcome that followed, what part of the case still feels the most unresolved to you? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below.